Hey, I'm Jimmy, and this is my week 6 discussion board post. This week we read Barn Burning, The Snows of Kilimanjaro, The Song of Alfred J. Prufrock, and Was in War in the Health of the State. We are asked the question, how is the transition to modernism and modernist thought appearing in these works? I'm just going to focus on Barn Burning mainly because I kind of understood this one better. In Barn Burning, I see a lot of things going on that were not being addressed in stories from earlier in history. I say that Mr. I'd say that Mr. Snopes, the barn burner, was probably suffering from PTSD and some kind of depression. He was obviously a poor tenant farmer and was also probably never really healed from the horrors he had seen in the Civil War. Um, there's also his youngest son, who he named after Colonel Sartoris, a fictional character. The character's made up by Faulkner and is part of a whole town that he has kind of made up in his head and writes a lot of stories about. Um, but anyway, Mr. Snopes is the barn burner, and he has this weird issue where whenever any of the rich farmers that he is leasing land from does anything that makes him feel belittled or beneath them, he basically burns their stuff. He burnt down Mr. Harris's barn after the guy charged him $1 to get his pig back after the pig had wandered up to Mr. Harris's barn 3 or 4 times. And this is basically where the story cuts in. We don't really get to see how he's acted before this, but I can only assume that this is probably not the first time he's done that. Um, so Mr. Harris supposedly even gave him fencing materials to build a pig pen, so gave him every opportunity he could to, fix the problem so he didn't feel belittled or didn't keep getting in trouble. But Mr. Snopes instead sent a servant with the dollar to claim the pig, and which is weird because he treated the servant like a slave, even though I'm pretty sure he served in the Civil War. So I don't know how he still is a slave, but anyway, um, the servant said to Mr. Harris that the wood and the hay can burn in not so good English. And then the very next night, his barn catches on fire, and he saves his livestock, but the barn's lost. And so he takes him to court, and there's no proof that the slave ever said this to him, and can't the slave supposedly can't be found now. And so Mr. Snopes is not found guilty, but at the same time, the judge says you better get out of town because most of the townspeople know by now what happened and don't believe that he was not guilty for it. So they let him go, and then he moves on to another farm. He found somehow. I don't really know how he knew about it, but he moves into this little house, and when he first gets there, he takes Colonel Sartoris Jr. basically up to the house, and the owner's not even there at the time. It's just his wife and a servant, and he barges in with horse manure all over his boots. Um, he traipses it over their $100 rug and wipes it on purpose, pretty much, even though he acts like he doesn't notice. He wipes basically horse manure all over their house and then just leaves. And it's $100 rug, so back in the day it was worth more than probably a whole year's salary. I don't know. It's from France or something. Um, but it's weird because it's like Mr. Snopes is out of his mind. He must be nuts or something from the war because he just does stuff that doesn't make sense. He just barged into that random guy's house and it's some giant mansion. Um, but anyway, the guy brings him the rug because once he comes home, he realizes what Mr. Snopes did and he wants him to fix it. So he wants him to clean the rug for him. But instead of doing that, Mr. Snopes burns the rug clean pretty much. First he washes the rug, then burns the shit out of it by the fire. So there again, he's doing something crazy, he's burning the rug just to make a point, and then he goes and drops the rug back off in the middle of the night and walks away slowly, deliberately, not trying to run off or anything. So then they take him to court for that, and he loses some more of the crop he was going to get. He has to give some more of the crop away at the end of the year to pay for the rug. So he gets pissed about that, and what does he do? He goes and burns down the guy's barn. And his son now wants justice. He wants truth. He doesn't want this crazy lifestyle to continue, and he doesn't believe in sticking to blood before anything else, which is what Mr. Snopes is trying to teach him. So he just goes and tells the guy in like the middle of the night or whenever they're burning down his barn. He runs up there and he yells at the guy and tells him, and the guy rides off on his horse, and you hear gunshots, and you never know what happened, but you pretty much know that the brother and Mr. Snopes got shot. And that's kind of the end of the story. The son's on his own now. I mean, he's got his mom and sisters back home, but they probably have to go do something crazy anyway. So he just goes off on his own through the woods. But kind of the moral of this story is that it's kind of different. It's new. It's different than what was in the past. Like the older style of writing is definitely kind of faded out. We're seeing more of like the viewpoint of a main character the whole time, and we don't really see things until he sees them unfold. And we get to know a lot more about what is inside the character's head as it goes along, and we get to see some conflict between like what's right and wrong, and how to let truth prevail and stuff. So I rambled on long enough. I'll end it here.